In this video, we're going to go over the different types of viewing options that you have inside the software. So this is things like zooming, viewing the grid or a hoop. And so we're going to take a little bit of time to go over each tool to show you how to use them and access them. So the first thing that I'm going to do is show you the grid. So you can see that there's a grid in the background on this work page. You have these dotted lines going vertically and horizontally, and then you also have this, it's a purple in color, lines that go vertically and horizontally. And so every certain number of boxes that you see here, basically, there'll be a line going vertically or horizontally. You can turn this on and off very easily inside of the software. All you have to do is come over to the left hand side and click on this view grid icon. So if I click it, you'll see that the grid goes away. Some people like to work with the grid in the background. Others like to have a blank page. It's all a personal preference. Sometimes it's very useful to have the grid up there, especially when you're trying to create stuff or line things up, make sure something's straight. And you can always get it back on by clicking that icon. You do have options for changing the size of your grid. So to do that, you would come up to Tools from the menu bar, and then you'd click on Preferences. And that will bring up the Preferences window. From inside of here, you can go over to the View tab, and you can do things like highlight a selection, the color that will be used in selecting, the grid. So this is what we're kind of working on right now. So you can see the spacing. You have every 10 millimeters. There's a horizontal line, and every 10 millimeters there's a vertical line. If I want to make this grid larger, let's say by 20 horizontally and 20 vertically, I can do that, and when I click OK, you'll notice that these boxes get larger. Another way to access the grid settings is to right click on the ruler that goes around the design page. So if I right mouse click on it, I can click on grid settings, and that will bring me right up into the options for the grid. So I can change this back to, let's say, the 10 again. You can have it be different for horizontal and vertical. So before I go on, I'll just show you what that is. So horizontally every 10 millimeters, vertically every 20. So when I hit OK, you can see that it, instead of being a perfect square, it's now a rectangular shape. So 10 millimeters by 20 millimeters. So if I come back up to grid setting, I'm going to change that back to 10 by 10. You also have the ability to change the color of these lines. So you can see the dotted lines here are in a gray color. If I wanted to change that color, it can get kind of crazy, but let me go do this lime green and hit OK. You're going to see that those lines are now in a different color. Now when this comes in handy is, let me go back to grid settings and change this back to like the gray color. It comes in handy sometimes when you're working with certain different colors of objects or backgrounds. So you can change that. Let me go back to the grid settings. Also, you have the grid major. So the grid major you'll see is this purple color. These are these lines that you see right here. If I wanted to change that to be every 5 lines instead of every 10, you'll notice that I have more of those purple lines in there. Likewise, if I make it a lot larger, like 20, and hit OK, they're spaced out quite a bit. So, and that's every 20 boxes that you see here, it'll have a line. Same thing here, every 20 going down, it'll do another line because I set it at 20. So I'm going to come back here and I'm going to put it back to 10. You can also change the color of that line the same way. So if you wanted it to be something like red, you could do that and it'll display that color. So I'm going to right click on here, go back to grid settings. I'm going to change it back to like a purple color here. But before I hit apply, I'm going to show you a few other things here. So you have styles. Right now it says show grid as dashed lines. So these are the little dashed lines that you see here. I could do it as solid lines. So if I click on this and I go to apply, now you're going to see it's kind of like graph paper. It's got a solid line all the way through. If I come back to grid settings, the last option that you have is the show grid as dots. So I'm going to click on that, click OK, and you'll notice that you just see a bunch of dots. It's kind of harder to work with in my opinion, but that option is there. By default, the default setting is show grid as dashed lines. That's the one that I prefer to do, and so I will click that, and then I'm going to go to OK. So those are your basic different options for working with a grid. Like I said, you can turn it on and off right here. So another thing that you can do is you can load a hoop onto the screen. So the hoop comes in handy if you're ever needing to make sure that something's going to fit within a hoop. Okay, so let me go to Tools, under View, you can go to View and you can go to Select Hoop. When you go to Select Hoop, you're going to have options for a bunch of different brands. So first you choose your format, the format for your machine. Like this is a PES, so this will work with a brother or baby lock. And then you can click here and you can find the different hoop sizes. If you have the 300 by 200, you would just select that and hit OK. But before I go on, I'll just show you can make your own hoops. You can delete a hoop that you've created. You can rotate a hoop by 90 degrees. So just really quick before I change that, if I click on New, you choose the format first, you give it a name. So like the name on this one is a 300 millimeter by 200 millimeter. So you would kind of do it by the size, and then you choose if it's a rectangular or circular, and then you put in what the width is and what the height is, and you press OK. And that saves it into the PES format, and it becomes available from the drop down here. So that's how you can easily create your own. But I'm going to go ahead and hit OK and get this different hoop in there. So you can see that that's loaded. Now I can make sure that I design everything to fit within here so that I know that it'll work on my machine. And you can come back over here and click that icon and turn it back off. So that's how you would view a hoop. And again, you go up to View and Select Hoop to change the hoop. The next thing that I'm going to do is bring a design in, so I can show you the different zoom options. So let me find a design here and bring in this one right here. Some of the other view options that you have is this brings it in and it's kind of in a two-dimensional view. If you want to see what it would look like as stitches, a replication of that, you would click on this 3D icon, and now it's going to replicate the best that it can the look of what it would be if you had stitched it out. So that's the 3D view. A lot of times I work in this 2D view simply just so I can see a lot of things that are going on underneath of stitches. So when you bring in a design like this, a lot of times you'll need to work on a specific area, and so you need to know how to use the zoom features. Now I can zoom in and out using the scroll wheel on my mouse just by moving it up or down. But if I want to focus on a specific area, like in this tail here, I would grab my zoom tool on the left hand side and I would just go to where I want to start zooming in. I'd left click, hold that left click and drag over the area that I want to see, and then release the mouse click, and that will zoom me in, and now I can work in this area much easier. I just right mouse clicked, and when I right mouse click, it zooms out. If I left mouse click, when I have this activated, the zoom tool, it'll zoom in. So that's an option that you have as well. So let's say that you were working in this area and you wanted to get back to the full view of the design. There's a couple ways that you can do that. First, this is a zoom percentage box up here at the top. If I click the down arrow, you can see that I can zoom in, I can zoom out, zoom to fit, zoom to selection, and then I have these different 1-to-1 ratio, and then I have percentages. So zooming in is like if I just zoom in one time, zoom out would zoom out one time, and you could keep going with that as much as you wanted to. The next thing is zoom to fit. This is something that you utilize a lot. When I click it, it's going to make the design as large as it can be on the screen. So it's a very handy way of getting back to where you want to be able to see the whole design. We also have the zoom to selection option, and for this to work I need to select something. So I'm going to hit my selection tool here, the top left, and I'm just going to click in an area. I have this all grouped together, so let me ungroup it. So when I click in this area, if I come back up here and do zoom to selection, it's going to make whatever is selected zoomed in, making it as large as it can be on the screen. So it's a very handy feature as well. And then we go back to zoom to fit. And so then you can do percentages like 75%. So it's going to make it 75% of the original size. So one of the other little shortcuts for getting it back to zooming to full screen is on this magnifying glass. If I double click it, so I just double clicked it with a left mouse click, it'll bring it right back up to size as well. I usually use that shortcut, just double clicking on the magnifying glass to bring it to full screen. So those are different ways that you can zoom in and out of a design. The next thing that I want to show you is how to view the print preview. So if you are done with the design and now you want to go stitch it out on your machine, if you're working on a design like this where you have multiple color sequences, you'll want to print something out to let you know what sequence you need to thread your machine and to stitch out the design. So I'm going to come up here, and under this print preview icon, if I click that, it'll take me into it. You can also access print preview by going to the file menu and then clicking on print preview. But I'm just going to click on the icon for print preview, and it's going to load up a different page here that you can see. And there are usually multiple pages available, and you'll see right here in the top left, these are your different print preview options. You can see that there's a next page or page down, so if I click that, it's going to take me to the next page. So usually the first page will show you the design, have a little crosshair in here, and it'll give you some information about the design. And when you go to the next page is when you'll actually see the color sequence. So the first thing you're going to stitch out is using this orange color, and then once it finishes you'll load the blue, and so on. So you do have settings options. So print settings, all I did is click this settings right here, and you can set your margins for the printing, and then you can also kind of tell it what you want to see in the print preview. So we have print actual size, print color analysis. This is the color analysis page right here. You can see it says color analysis. You can print it in one page if you want. So if I click this icon and hit OK, you'll see that it actually shows me the design, and then it gives me the color sequence. And I don't have the option to go to the next page here because I chose to print it all in one. Now keep in mind that it will zoom your design in, so it won't be at actual size. A lot of times if you use this option, depending on how many colors are in the design, let's go back to settings and let me uncheck that. If you have a hoop, you can click the hoop and it will preview the hoop in the background. Right now it's showing crosshairs. These are the crosshairs right here. You have the ability to print thick crosshairs, so it'll make them a little thicker. That is handy when you're using something like a Floriani template tearaway or another product that you're printing the design onto. If you have artwork in the design, you can choose to show the artwork, and you have like stitch mode, remove jump stitches, design colors. This is kind of a neat tool. So you can see in this design right here, you'll see ruby red shows up twice. The snapdragon shows up twice. So if I choose this design colors, and then I'm also doing the thicker crosshairs, and I hit OK, they're going to show up here at the top the actual colors that I need for the design. So this isn't the stitch order, this is just telling me I need this color, this color, this color, so that if you're going to go grab colors on your machine, you can go and make sure you grab all of them that you need. And because I took off the print in one page, now I can go back and I can see the color sequence guide there. So I'm going to go back up here and go to settings. You can put a title for it if you would like. You just click on this title, type in something. But those are your print settings. And when you're getting ready to stitch your design out, you'll want to go into the print preview and arrange it the way that you want. You can notice here that the thicker crosshairs that I put in there, you can see them much better. So that's a useful tool. So when you're done getting it set up the way you want, you can just hit the print button and you can select your printer and print out these 2 sheets. And if you're not ready to print it out, you can just hit this close icon and it will take you back into the work screen. So that's the print preview options in the software. It's very helpful. You'll always want to print out one of those design pages so that you know what you need to do at your machine. So I hope that this video was helpful in learning how to work with the different viewing options inside of Floriani Lettering Master.